Now, I know that it is a somewhat gray area when it comes to emulation and whether or not it is okay to do, but hear me out. I am not endorsing emulation, nor will I tell you how to emulate games. That is for other YouTubers to do. But from my point of view, there are many reasons that people may emulate, and I think that as long as they are not profiting off of selling the emulated games, it is completely reasonable for the everyday person to emulate games. First of all, artificial scarcity is one of the least consumer-friendly marketing tactics that I have ever heard of. Basically, artificial scarcity is when something is for sale for only a limited time or in limited amount, and then it will never be sold ever again. Now, I will concede that in some industries it makes sense to limit how long things can be purchased for, but it makes absolutely no sense at all for games to be limited time purchases in the majority of circumstances. I don't know how many games have been put on for limited time runs, but the biggest example that I can think of is when Nintendo put up Super Mario 3D All-Stars, an amazing compilation of some of the biggest 3D Mario games made, for only 6 months. And it was very stupid, but at first I thought it was only for the physical copy. For some reason, maybe Nintendo didn't want to spend some of their billions to keep producing this game physically. But you can't even buy it on the eShop anymore. It makes absolutely no sense for this to be a thing, from a consumer or business perspective. From the consumer, it just puts pressure to find a way to buy this game. And maybe these people feel some FOMO because if they don't buy it now, they can never get it for a regular price in the future. They will pay upwards of $10 more than regular price, plus shipping, to get the game. And this is only after a couple of years. In the future, people will be paying a lot more if they want to get their hands on a copy. Because as people buy these already sold copies, there will be less and less available in the ecosystem, so obviously because of supply and demand, the price will increase. Also, this doesn't even take into consideration that in the future, maybe people that were kids at the time of this release and weren't able to get it, or just weren't aware of it, will have to shell out much more than its retail value just to get the game. From a business perspective, it makes even less sense. They spend all of this upfront cost to produce these games, and then once they stop, any further purchases of these games from resellers, Nintendo loses out on that money. Also, Mario is the best-selling game franchise in the world, and the games that are included in this collection are some of the most popular games from this immensely popular franchise. It also seems dumb because you would still be getting many purchases far into the future. The decisions Nintendo makes baffle me sometimes. When you buy a new console to replace your old one, you will likely sell the old one, because why do you really need an old one if you have the new one, and you might need the money anyway. But then you realize that the new console isn't able to play games from the old one. Now on one hand, it makes some sense for you not to be able to play old games on a new console, but then you think logically and realize, if it uses the same type of disc or cartridge, why can't it just be backwards compatible? Maybe it adds some extra production cost, but are we going to act like these multi-billion-dollar companies can't spare more extra production cost to make a better product for us consumers? I'm not a manufacturer, but I feel like it would be relatively easy to make older games work on a newer console. But maybe it's just my lack of knowledge. But what I do know is that a lot of companies use this as a scummy way to get even more of our money. They make it so you can't play these games that you want on your new console, but then they act like they didn't realize that people would want this, but now that they know, they will release a remaster or remake at full price. As if they didn't make enough money off of you, they re-release a game at full price, most of the time with the bare minimum effort put into it to make it slightly more acceptable to charge full price. If you have a game that you want that is more of a retro title, but can be even as recent as the Wii U era, you will likely have to still pay full price, if not more, for just the game. That doesn't even take into account having to buy the console that the game is playable on. Usually, older consoles sell for a ton. Then you start to think if this game, or these multiple games, are really worth playing, because you'd have to spend so much money in order to play them. and then you may miss out on a really cool experience. With some of the older consoles, you might even have to buy an old TV or an adapter to even be able to use the console and play the game. It is such a shame that this is such an expensive avenue because there are a lot of older games that you might not be able to play. I feel this is the most acceptable reason for emulating games. If it was easier to get these games, I feel most consumers would be willing to give the developer their money. But because of the fact that it is so expensive to get, and they would be getting it secondhand anyway, me personally, I wouldn't see a problem with emulation in this scenario, and I feel most people have similar feelings on this. Although it is the solution to many, if not all of the problems that I've mentioned, it isn't always possible for you to find a game emulated. If you have a very niche and obscure game in mind that you want to try playing, it might not be available to download off of any ROM websites. You still might end up running into the hard-to-get problem. And then there are games that are like LEGO Dimensions, Skylanders, or really any Toys to Life game. You may be able to emulate the game, but it is very likely that you would not be able to fully experience the game as it was intended to be, because it is hard to emulate these character and level packs without going through a bunch of complex loopholes. Now, emulating a game from a multi-billion-dollar company that isn't going to be very affected by your lack of a purchase is very different from emulating a game from a small indie dev team that needs all of the support they can get. I do not agree with emulating indie games, because a lot of them are very good and much cheaper compared to a full-priced AAA game anyway, and it also actually feels wrong, because you know that behind the game is a team of devs that are actually passionate about the game and aren't just making a cash grab with the bare minimum effort like some bigger game studios. Now, although I would never partake in emulating a game or two, I would still recommend immense caution. Make sure you are getting your ROMs from a trusted website and they don't have malware-ridden files. I would also like to say that for legal purposes, I would recommend not emulating games, as it is a gray area with very fine lines, but gaming communities and the internet as a whole don't really have a problem with it as long as it is just for personal use. Just bear this in mind before you go and emulate games. That's all I'm saying. If you made it this far, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribing as it helps the channel out a ton. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you for watching, and good gaming to you all.